the million-dollar question, which everyone wants to know about. People's main gripe is money. Should they be leaving to go to industry? Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. For those who don't know us yet, I'm Varun. I'm a trainee radiologist in the UK. And this week we're very lucky to be joined by my friend and namesake, also Varun. So Varun, first of all, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Today we're going to be talking about life outside of medicine as a doctor. Varun, who will briefly tell you about himself, is a doctor who has now left medicine and works in pastures greener. I hope you're going to tell me, but we'll see.
Perhaps.
So Varun, just tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. I trained in the UK about 10 years ago. I then did my foundation training in the UK, in the Birmingham area. And after that, I decided that I didn't want to practice clinically anymore. I was very interested in kind of the intersection between computer science and medicine. So specifically that's AI and machine learning and how that works with medicine. So for the last about 4 or 5 years, I've been working mostly in the US, but also a little bit in London. Outside of medicine, working in kind of product management and sort of scientific/research roles in AI and healthcare and building models and managing that process.
So a lot of things were said there that a lot of medics won't understand.
Okay.
And we'll come to that as we can talk a bit more about that.
Okay.
But I suppose the first thing to talk about is, at what point did you realize medicine wasn't for you, clinical medicine wasn't for you, and what were the things that made you leave?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that the course that I was doing was structured was that we had a very clear preclinical and clinical section. So the preclinical section, I loved it. I think the clinical section was when I started to realize that perhaps the way that this looks isn't ideal for me, doesn't fit my personality, or it doesn't fit the things which I would want to spend my time doing for the rest of my life. So I think I had like a suspicion earlier in my career, probably like the 4th or 5th year of medical school, but I don't think at that point I had the conviction to stop and start doing something else. I think I made that decision finally when I had actually started practicing, and I decided, yeah, I think I'm right about the fact that I don't think this is the best career for me, and that there are other things that I could do which I think I would find more enjoyable and be able to contribute more to.
What specifically did you not enjoy? And do you think maybe you'd enjoy it in a different system?
Again, I think that's sort of, I think both of the things you say are true, in the sense that I think there are certain aspects of the job that I didn't enjoy, and that job meaning wherever you do it, and then there's certain aspects of the time and the place. So in terms of general things, I think one of my bigger problems was that I'm one of these people that likes to have really good reasoning about why you're doing something, and really good kind of explainable scientific grounding for everything that you do. And obviously when you come into medicine, this is your kind of perfect world of textbook medicine goes away. You're dealing a lot more with stuff that's very protocol driven. You're doing it because you've been told to do it rather than understanding why. I also found that I'm better dealing with problems in my own time and at my own pace, rather than being somebody who, as a doctor, obviously you have to respond to conditions on the ward, patients coming in, treating them, there's a ton of different priorities that are thrown at you very quickly. You have to be extremely agile, and I don't think that fit for me perfectly well. I think for me, I'm somebody who I like those things to an extent, but I also like to spend a few hours thinking about something, writing something, having a extended period of time where you could kind of tackle a complicated problem. And then during the time that I was training, there was also considerable turmoil in kind of the world of junior doctors and medicine, which I think, unfortunately is sort of present now as well. Yeah. But certainly that was, I think, a time when it was really accelerating, and it was a difficult place, I thought, to develop and be in. There is like a number of factors. I knew that there was a good chance I would leave. Maybe some of the issues in the NHS may have pushed me over.
What do you do at the moment?
So I work in an area which is I would just describe as product management. I work at a big tech company which is based in the US. Product management just means you basically elicit the requirements of what people want from products, and products can be, right from a phone to a computer to a software product, whatever. So my product management is within an area that is essentially healthcare AI, and healthcare AI software, building the tools that people need to put together artificial intelligence and machine learning models for healthcare. That includes basically hospitals, it includes pharma companies, it includes a whole bunch of startups and other smaller companies that are all looking to innovate within healthcare and digital health and AI, essentially. I work with those customers and put together products that will help them build hopefully the next generation of useful algorithms.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think when you say these things to some medics, they don't really understand world outside of medicine, like what these things actually mean, what do people do.
Yeah.
So what does an average day or an average week, if there is such a thing, look like for you?
Yeah, so I would say most industry roles, whether you're working at a pharma company or you're working at a big tech company, consulting or in finance, it involves basically a mixture of meetings and work independently on material that you then either present to people or send to people, etc. So there's a lot of interacting with people within your own team, within your own organization, and also external people, customers, etc. A lot of that used to be in person. Increasingly now we're obviously much more accepting of using video calls. So there's a lot of video conferencing that goes on, and also talking with customers, helping them use your product and understand your product, that kind of thing. Okay. So I would say it's an extremely social job, and in between you do have some work where you're working on your own on things, building presentations, building documents, doing research for the things you're putting together. So it can be varied in that sense, but it's obviously totally different to the 9 to 5 of I guess there's no 9 to the 24/7 of a doctor. And that's a good point to make, actually, is that most of these positions do tend to fall within 9 to 5. That's not to say you don't do evening or weekend work, but I guess mostly the formal expectations are that you would work in the sort of main part of the day. There are certain industries like consulting and finance that people do go into where they also end up working 24/7, but they tend to do that not in a formal way. It's just because there's just a tremendous volume of work. It definitely varies in which part of the world or the part of the industry that you're working with.
In your particular role in tech, would you say your work-life balance is better, worse, or comparable to what it was like when you were working on the wards?
I'd say that in general, I'm happier with it. I would say it tends to be that you get areas of like a lot of activity and areas of lower activity, which tends to work with where the organization's going, where you've got different customer needs, etc. A lot of the work tends to fall into working hours, which is great. So one of my issues, and I think it's an issue for a lot of people, is having to work in evenings and nights and weekends. But that's obviously part of providing a service to a patient population. Whereas because everybody, including our customers, tend to follow normal working hours, it means that you're needed during those hours as well. It's not to say you don't work on the evening or the weekend, but you tend to do most of it in the sort of the normal 9 to 5. Overall, that works well for me. I also think the work is a lot more. I think you have to be much more self-motivated, self-driven, in the sense that you haven't got somebody coming and pushing you to do things all the time. But you're having to do those things so that at some checkpoint or some meeting later on, you can present to people and say, okay, this is what I've been working on. Whereas in medicine, you've got so many different people pushing you to do so many different things, and you're continuously being evaluated.
I think that's something I didn't realize or appreciate until you spoke to non-medics. And that's just not in the workplace. Yeah, in the workplace, there's plenty of people asking you to do things there and then, and you have to go and do them as a doctor. But even just career progression wise, we have a very sort of escalator-like program. Like once you're on, the hurdles just keep coming your way, and you kind of have to jump over them or you fall off. But that route is very well set. Whereas in other careers, I assume you very much have to go and seek opportunity and be a lot more proactive about these things.
Yeah, exactly.
When you go through medical school, you pick up a lot of skills that I think you don't really appreciate. So what skills do medics in general have? Obviously vary person to person, but generally speaking, what skills do we develop that industry is looking for?
I think as a medical student, you pick up a very wide gamut of skills, actually, and you don't necessarily realize that, as you said. But I think the main one that is the most important is clearly being able to explain things to people, communicate things to people, make them feel like you are hearing them, persuade them on things. All of those skills are actually vital in industry. Yes, there are obviously lots of things, you need to be hardworking, intelligent, etc. But if you're a very good communicator, it adds a tremendous amount above all of your peers if they're not. So that's a big advantage you have, having to do a lot of OSCEs and communication skills training, etc., etc., and just being a very personable profession, which it is. That helps you a tremendous amount, I think. That's one of the skills. Your time management, organization is another one. You often have to do presentations and write in a particular way when you're doing, for example, research. I think that's actually very useful as well. So I think that what medicine gives you are actually some of the most important skills that you need. It is all about how you interact with people. Obviously, what you do, you need to go and learn about it. But then as a medic, you often go and look things up and learn about them yourselves all the time, right? Yeah. So in my opinion, going to medical school gives you a tremendous number of skills. The only disadvantage, if you wanted to do something else, is that you come out 2 to 3 years later than everyone else at the same position. That's the only issue. So when you come out at 24, somebody who's at 21 is applying for the same job. Other than that, you actually get the skills that 21-year-old has, plus a whole bunch of others, which are very useful.
Is that something you thought about then, or is this something you kind of ended up in, inadvertently, I guess?
Yeah, that's another really good question too, because it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly what I wanted to do. I think when you're inside medicine, you have a relatively limited understanding of all the different things that you can do outside medicine. Yeah. I think you have a vague idea of what they are, but I don't think you know them exactly very well. So I knew I wanted to do something that probably was not finance, probably wasn't something like consulting, certainly nothing artistic, because I'm terrible at everything to do with art and music and culture. But I did know that I wanted to do something with technology. Now, the fact that it was AI, no, I had no idea that it was going to be AI, because that was really an emerging trend at the time that I decided to leave. And so it's something that you just catch on to, but it's within a broad area that you're probably going to go into.
I imagine it takes a lot of planning to transition into a different career. So how did you manage that process?
So I think that you're right in saying it should take a lot of planning. Unfortunately, that's not always the way it goes, because I think being a doctor is a very busy job. It's very difficult to have your attention on many things. You can be doing many things, but to have your attention on many things and really focus is difficult. A good friend of mine who was in the same university as me, a year or two above, told me about a company that he was working at, and he said, hey, why don't you come and join us? Because you obviously like this kind of thing. So for me, it was very good. But in terms of planning, I definitely recommend that people plan better than that, because what happens if you don't plan is you end up in this kind of loop of just coasting, and you just end up doing locums, and you look at all the things which you could be doing, but then you don't quite want to make the move. And the reason for that is because you haven't fully explored or thought through all the options. I would say stay in the training program until you don't have to have a position ready, but you have to know about it. The knowledge is the really important thing, because it allows you to react to all the different opportunities that come your way.
So if somebody's watching this and they're thinking, you know what, this resonates with me, I'm not really enjoying where I am right now in clinical practice, and I'm thinking of leaving, how do you think somebody should approach that process?
One of the best resources are people who have already left. Most medical schools and medical circles now, I think there are people who have done other things. Not only do you learn about the things they've done, but they've probably also excluded a whole bunch of options in getting to where they are. Yeah. And so they're very good sources of information. It's not like every doctor should go into tech, or every doctor should go into finance or consulting or whatever. Everybody has their strengths, and unlike medicine, outside of medicine, those strengths and weaknesses get very exaggerated and examined. I would say it's really useful to get some clinical experience. So that's one of the things I didn't realize when I was in the process of leaving medicine, is just how valuable that experience on the wards actually is. Because you learn a bunch of content in medical school that really comes alive when you go into a hospital. Not only that, you interact with other healthcare professionals. You see what the patient journey is like. You see what the doctor journey is like, right? Because often some of the careers that you're going to go into are providing not only for those patients, but also for those healthcare. In fact, the majority of these careers are providing for doctors, for healthcare professionals, for researchers, and you don't get to meet them in the same way you do when you leave for the hospital that you do at medical school.
Sure. Industry generally, are they receptive to medics? Because it seems that more and more medics are leaving. Do they kind of know what to expect from medics? Do they go looking for medics? How does that interaction really work?
Yeah, so it really depends on what you mean by industry. So there are areas that people with medical training fit into in different industries, right? So the most natural one, or the most natural few, might be the pharmaceutical industry or medical devices, anything to do with medical research. All of these industries obviously welcome medics with open arms because they have a tremendous amount of insight and understanding of the way that care is delivered, and also know all of the science.
Okay.
That combination is very useful in those industries, and so a lot of medics are in a lot of high demand in them. Then when you look at things like, for example, consulting, management consulting, they're very useful within the context of health and life sciences projects. And then as you start to go even further from that, the fact that you are a doctor becomes less important.
And I suppose the million-dollar question, which everyone wants to know about, if people's main gripe is money, should they be leaving to go to industry?
No, because you can just go and work in medicine in another country.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fair enough, okay. Would you say the remuneration, I'm not going to ask about your job, but generally speaking, is it similar to what consultants are in this country? Is it very variable? Is it less? Is it more?
Like I said, if you go and work in medicine in another country, so let's take examples like the US or Canada or Australia, New Zealand, consistently the amount of earning at the same level is higher. If you go into industry in the UK, into various industry roles, I think what you'll find is for the work that you do, meaning if you work 9 to 5, no evenings, no nights and no weekends, then I think you'll find that the pay is probably higher for that work. Don't leave medicine for money because you can get very well compensated for doing medicine in another country if you want to. Leave medicine because there are things that you want to do that are more interesting in making your money. I think that's probably my advice.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. Well, thank you very much, Varun, for enlightening us all. Opens a lot of people's eyes to what life outside medicine is actually like.
Yeah, I'm glad I could be of help.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. Well, guys, if you liked the video, then hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions, then put them in the comments down below. He'll try and get back to you, but he's a busy guy, so it might take a little bit of time. We'll see you guys same place, same time next week. See you later.